Blog Talk Radio.
Well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Move Election Day out of the way for a minute, depending on what side of the coin you are. Republicans, Democrats, Independents. This is the American Sports History Podcast coming front center stage for you tonight. 347-205-9631. You can email mancinisports@yahoo.com. Without further ado, let me give him the red carpet. Let me give him the podium, the mic. And if you can't hear this thing live, catch it on the blogtalkradio.com/Mancini Sports, all the podcast platforms. Peter, first of all, how are you? Second of all, how can people get a hold of you? Third of all, you hit the lottery with this guest today.
Yes, the famous three questions. And let's see, I'm doing well, and I have a YouTube channel. It's my name, Peter J. Ray, R-E-A. I have a website, Adventures in History with Peter J. Ray at peterjray.com. And you're absolutely right about our guest tonight. She, of course, in American sports history, you have the athletes, you have the fans, but health is certainly important for everyone. And she's involved in this all so important field. She's a wellness coach and therapist involved with clinical hypnotherapy, yoga, and mindfulness, movement, and stress management. She's from Milwaukee, lives in Los Angeles, California, studied business management, also Blue Lotus Thai healing, and she got into, she's also studied at the National Academy of Sports Medicine. She's the owner and founder of and wellness coach, clinical hypnotherapist at Lisa Eurich, wellness coach and clinical hypnotherapist. Also the owner and founder of and yoga therapist and educator, Pilates instructor, stretch therapist at Yoga 2 LA. And also she was involved at Seasons in Malibu and Cliffside, Malibu as a clinical hypnotherapist. It's an honor and a privilege to have on the show tonight Lisa Eurich.
Well, thank you very much. That was a fantastic, informative bio. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, it's you're the field of, to me, we're my own opinion about medical care. We as a country, the United States, an enormous amount of money is spent in medical care. We have an awful lot of sick people, and so, in my opinion, we're living in the dark ages. And there's so much to learn. And people like you are the future of medicine. It's so important because you have people dying young. You have people who are sick. They can't live their lives. They can't work and stuff. So it's so important that if we can get better health care and new ideas and to help people to have health, and so so they can live their lives. Now, Lisa, can you give us a background of your education and your employment and your experiences in the field of health?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, initially, something I was always interested in my entire life. I was doing yoga from the time I was a child, just because I would watch this lady on PBS who would do yoga and could bend and move, and I was always hyper flexible when I was a child, so it was cool for me, and it was something that really, I felt I could move very well in my body. So as I got older, in the back of my head, that was something I wanted to do and to teach to others. However, I was deathly shy and really just, couldn't imagine standing up and talking in front of people. So I didn't go that route. When I went to college, I ended up majoring in business administration and marketing, because my dad told me that would always be useful in life, which it is. It's really kind of helped me through my business in and of itself. But as I got a little bit older and I had my first son, and I really started to reevaluate my life, I thought, this has always been nagging in the back of my head that I wanted to do this, to teach yoga and to help people with their wellness and to move better and breathe better through their body. So I ended up, taking a lot of education, a lot of courses. I traveled throughout the country studying not only yoga, but Pilates, as you mentioned, and also fitness training. And, I've used to teach a lot of Zumba classes and spinning classes and all that. So I eventually forced myself to get over my shyness, and because it was always nagging in the back of my head that there was a way to help people holistically rather than just, I mean, obviously medical, guidance is needed often, but there's also ways to be preventative on your health, and that was where I was coming from.
So could you talk about the Blue Lotus Thai healing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I studied that. That was in Chicago, actually. So as you mentioned, I'm in LA now. I've been here about 11 years, originally from Milwaukee, and lived not too far from Chicago. And so I would say it was about 12 years ago that probably more than that, 14 years ago, that I ended up finding this program in Chicago, and which tied in with yoga and movement. However, as Thai yoga healing, that is a way of moving someone's body for them. Basically, it's a therapeutic technique. It's an ancient therapeutic technique. It's over 2,500 years old. It's like a lineage that comes from through Thailand and India, and it's a way of taking pain and stress and tension out of the body that we hang on to, not just physically, but it also can be mentally, and emotions that go on that we store within us that cause tightness and stiffness and sickness. So it's a way of moving the body in a flow of postures that the client gets to be completely passive. They just hang out there. I do the movement for them. All they need to do is breathe through it, and I guide them through the breathing as well.
So you're moving their arms and legs?
Yes, and their spine and twisting the back. Nothing. Never taking them to the point that is beyond what their body would have went anyway. It's not like cracking your back or something like that. But it's taking you a little further than you would on your own, so that you can, and to be more relaxed through it. You're not holding anything back. Because a lot of times when people are exercising or doing yoga or stretching, we hit a point that feels maybe somewhat uncomfortable. So we'll kind of stop ourselves. It's like, oh, this is a little tight, But then there's this slight space where you could even go a little further, and then you'll experience this real relief. So that's what I do.
Do you do you trigger points?
I do, yes. Acupressure, compressions, stretching, it's all part of it. Kind of along the energy lines of the body, again, to remove what we call in that field stagnant energy. You might have pain in your knees, let's say, for example, and there's a way to put compressions on the inner thighs, the outer thighs, that help to relieve the tightness in the ligaments around the knees and circulate blood flow. So you do compression for a while, that holds it right there, and it almost starts to feel like your limb is going to, that going to sleep feeling. And then as soon as you release it, there's this rush of blood flow that occurs. So that's a healing process, and you find that you can move easier.
I've been a member of Self-Realization Fellowship since 1984. We practice yoga meditation, and the thing that involves having the spine erect or trying to have the spine erect. And one of the unfortunate things in my life, I developed bad posture as a boy. And so anyway, when I'm doing these, when when I'm doing meditation, I'm really making the effort to sit up straight, and then I find I have these like muscle knots in my neck, especially, and in my shoulders. And then my brother was telling me about if you apply pressure, it hurts, but it also helps to these. You heard about these muscle knots that are problematic, and if you apply pressure on them, they will sort of loosen and become less of a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, because there's a tendency to, do you find that you're kind of like bringing your shoulders up by your ears sometimes and kind of squeezing and tensing?
No, it's just that the act, since, like I said, I have this very unfortunate, because to have good health, from what I understand, you need to have an erect spine, and a lot of people, especially in modern times, have developed bad posture, including myself. And then during meditation, you really are trying to have good posture, and then that's when I seem to feel these muscle knots becoming painful. And
right.
I practice, I press on them, and that seems to help. And so, but
a very good way to practice. And I know what you're saying about like at the self-realization centers, how they have the very straight back chairs, right?
Right.
And you're sitting very erect. A good way to practice that process of getting the spine to be stronger is to, if you can, one of them is to sit on the floor and, scoot yourself so that your tailbone is touching the wall.
Uh-huh.
Lean a little bit forward, and then as you try to bring your spine upward on, connecting it to the wall, feel like you're pulling your belly button towards your spine, and then bring each vertebrae of the spine really close to the wall. Even the lower part of your back, the lumbar spine, where we have that general, that curve right there, that's where if you pull the belly button towards the spine, feel like you're contracting your abdominal muscles, and you get each vertebrae of your spine really close to the wall, and then push your shoulder blades back, put your shoulders back, drop them really far from your ears, and then feel the most protruding part of your skull against the wall as well, where your chin is parallel to the floor, and you imagine like you have a string at the top of your head, right? So your skull is touching the wall, your chin's tucked in a little bit towards the base of your neck, shoulders pull back, they drop down, each vertebrae of the spine connects, and you sit there like that for a while, and it will, if that's something you're not, generally doing, it will feel uncomfortable. But it's training the muscles of the spine around the vertebrae of the spine to become stronger. It's like, in some ways it could equate it to like lifting weights, right? You do weights enough, you're going to start building up your biceps if that's what you're working on. Same thing. If you sit like that, really be mindful of pulling your belly towards your spine, shoulders back, head tall. It's going to start making your spine stronger. It makes your abdominals stronger as well. And, you try that every day for maybe, try a minute and try 2 minutes. You could have the TV on as you're doing it and just focus on breathing in and breathing out and sitting with that. And then when you release it, of course, your spine is going to kind of like go back into its relaxed state. But eventually it starts getting stronger where it feels actually more comfortable to be that way. And it's a long process, but eventually it gets to the point of feeling more comfortable that way.
So that's your recommendation for changing from a bent spine to a straight spine?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And again, if someone could not get on the floor, which is fine, just have a hard back chair, very, very straight, and do the same thing. Push your tailbone against the very back of the chair. Make sure your legs are at a right angle where the knees line up with the hips, and your knees are also over your ankles. Your feet are flat on the floor, and then continue to connect from the base of your spine, from your tailbone. Work yourself up towards your shoulder blades and sit up real tall. Again, you could put your chair against the wall so your head would touch the wall, so your head just isn't hanging out there.
Can you talk about your work with hypnotherapy?
Certainly, yes. Hypnotherapy. So I transitioned into that actually when I moved to California. It was funny years ago. Like I said, I've been teaching everything for yoga and fitness and wellness and all that for like 25 years. So I moved. I should back up for a second. I had a student in my yoga classes who was a retired cardiologist, and him and his wife were coming to my classes for years because he was trying to avoid spinal surgery, which is, people, you want to try to avoid that if you at all can. So he was trying to strengthen his back. And one day at the end of a yoga class, we generally do a guided meditation, taking people into Shavasana, where you're in a deep state of relaxation. And he comes up to me after class and he says, have you ever thought of being a hypnotherapist? And now this was, maybe 15, 20 years ago. And I said to him, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so for my birthday, he brought me this book about hypnotherapy. And I read it and I moved it around with me when I moved across the country. And it so happened that where I landed in LA, within a mile of my house was the only accredited hypnotherapy college in the United States. So I took that as a sign that I got to check this out, and that's where it led me. So hypnotherapy is about working with the mind, working with our thoughts. We have subconscious thoughts. We have things that we do on autopilot, like perhaps what you were just saying about posture, about the way we sit. We don't generally think about sitting unless it becomes, or how our back feels, unless it becomes a problem. And then when you are sitting up straight like that, that is your conscious awareness. You're consciously making yourself be in a way that is different for you. So going back to subconscious things that we do are maybe driving somewhere, right? You might go from one destination to another, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I knew I drove here, but I don't remember passing certain, residences or stores or things like that, because they might be a path that you always take. It can be also, like tying your shoes. Tying our shoes is very subconscious because we do that all the time. We don't give it any thought. Breathing is subconscious. We don't think about it. However, we can make it a conscious effort, and when we do that, that's where we get into the ability to use it to relax us, to release anxiety, to help us sleep, to bring down the heart rate. And so what hypnotherapy does is takes your subconscious things and the things that you do want to focus on more, we elevate them to your conscious awareness, which is really only, this area is 12% of our awareness is conscious. And conscious things are like using our logic, using our decision making, our willpower, our resilience, our ability to bounce back from things. So I use it often. I have a lot of clients that I've worked with over the years that maybe are dealing with anxiety issues, dealing with stress, dealing with the inability to sleep. I've worked with professional athletes that were X Games participants, on the ESPN and all that, on focus and concentration, and really, seeing themselves from everything to getting dropped off at the arena where they're going to run their course, to let's say it's skateboarding or bicycling, stepping on the skateboard, getting on the bicycle. What are they wearing? What's around you? Who's around you? What are you hearing? It's almost kind of like a virtual reality in a way, putting someone in the setting that they want to be in and then seeing themselves through to succeed to the end.
Now, when you deal with the subconscious, are you trying to come up with things that are in the subconscious that the person hasn't told you about, or helping them deal with things maybe they're not really aware that are troubling them? Is that it? Is that part of it?
That can be. I mean, it can go a couple different ways, right? It could be in the subconscious, you might have a belief that you are easily distracted. You might have a belief that you cannot succeed. You might have a belief that, hey, I've always had a high level of anxiety. I can't get rid of it. We tell ourselves these stories. The mind defaults to the negative. So what I work on is taking it, flipping it, basically flipping the whole thing around. Like, what do you want versus what you don't want? Now, in working with clients, as you mentioned, I work in treatment centers here in Malibu. There's a lot of drug and alcohol and addiction treatment, and also mental health treatment. And oftentimes, people have perhaps had traumatic things that occurred as a child, and granted, you cannot change those, but you can be the caretaker as an adult of the child that experienced those things, because maybe there was not an adult around to care for you. So you're carrying around the pain and sadness of this child, and now as the adult, you get to have a I can take you to a point of, if someone wanted to having like a conversation with their inner child, or perhaps even if they don't want to go to an inner child, an inner guide, someone that could tell them, we all know inherently, we do know, which we might not connect with, but we do know what it is we want and what we need. It's all in there somewhere. It's just a matter of getting to that point. So perhaps someone wants to connect with their inner guide, who will help them make decisions, make choices, things that are beneficial to their lives.
So now these traumas, are these things that they've never talked about before?
It can be, and again, it doesn't have to, I don't necessarily go there unless someone wants to go there. And for the most part, it's things that people are fully aware of, but they just have not been able to connect with it, or they feel disassociated from. But they have not, been able to rectify their feelings, their experiences about that. For the most part, though, like I said, I work a lot on meeting you where you're at now and where do you want to be, like taking it forward.
How do you help people come to terms with their trauma and get over it so it's not causing problems in their life?
Well, seeing as I'm not a traditional like marriage and family therapist. Hypnotherapist is different. Again, it's meeting you where you're at, moving forward. Taking it back that way is getting someone into a very relaxed state, which I do through breathing, through imagery, guided imagery practices, through what we call grounding, getting them to connect with where they are at the present. Because oftentimes the mind has, for some people the mind is racing. It can be a lot of flashes to the past, glimpses of things that happened in the past, and we're trying to figure out, well, maybe because this happened, this is why I do this. And if someone would have been a different way to me, I would be different. We're trying to rectify this in our mind. So that would be the grounding, again, is bringing them to feeling where they are in the present, knowing that they're very secure and stable where they are at, feeling very supported and cared for, and then going through a guided journey of, it's like directing someone's imagination. I'll take them on a guided path perhaps and be very descriptive where we're going, and somewhere that they feel comfortable with, that they're creating in their own mind, that they feel safe, secure, warm, stable, and then inviting their guide or their inner child to be present, that they can ask them, as the person they are now, ask them questions and just wait for the answer. So I'm not directing any of the questions or any of the answers. I'm guiding them to what questions to perhaps ask, but then they sit and wait for the answers.
When I was growing up, I had a very loving childhood, and then my parents and my sister actually died when I was 11, and then and I'm going to talk about myself a little bit here, so it just brings it up. And then I developed depression, and in my early 20s, I had problems with drugs and alcohol, and I was actually I was in a mental hospital for a year and a half, and I feel compelled, and I feel like I was poisoned by the doctors, the psychiatric medication that I was given. And anyway, I got out. I've been able to live my life, but I kind of feel compelled to talk about it because it was a really a horrific experience. And my parents, they were actually very good people, and they I guess I was kind of a strange, maybe unique or creative person, and my mother had problems with her father, so she saw evil in me or something like that, and then but anyway, they had faith in doctors, and once I got into that, and then I went through that whole, anyway, I feel compelled for some reason. I don't know if I should just I feel like sometimes I think I shouldn't talk about it, or but I have a compulsion, and I have a very good friend who he's very patient, and he listens to me talk about it, and I found actually that very healing, because I just having someone to listen to me and say and just to acknowledge that what I'd been through.
Right.
So
yeah,
anyway.
absolutely. But no, absolutely no. I mean, in traumas like that, I mean, it sounds good that you have a person you can share these things with, because honestly, that's part of you. That's part of your life, and it's very difficult to just push these things down and pretend like they didn't occur. But it's, kind of a matter of how do you healthfully carry that with you now as an adult. But when you're sharing, you're helping other people too in sharing that. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, what's funny is then after that, my parents kind of felt like, that they're both gone now. They were good people, and I don't want to be the person who blames their parents, but after that they were always angry about, because it was hard on them. It was very hard on them what I went through as well. I was in the hospital, and they felt bad. They had a daughter who died, and they had this son going through this, and then they were respected people. Then over the years, they were angry about what that had, and so I really couldn't couldn't talk to them about it because they didn't want to hear it, because they were, it hurt them, and not many people want to hear about it. They're like, oh God, Mike, and you have to be pretty good friends to bring it, because they think you're crazy or whatever, crazy person. Mm-hmm. It's just an unbelievable thing, and it just sort of. And some of these things, that especially gave me this sense of being a bad person, and because I felt like condemned, and that's why I find the whole topic fascinating, because some of the people I dealt with in the mental health field, I felt like they really looked down on me, that I was really a bad, they were very cold. That's why I like the movie Patch Adams, where you've seen that movie with Robin Williams where he's in a mental hospital, and he says, I'm ready to go. I want to go out, because I know what I want to do with my life. And he says, I want to help people. And the doctor says, well, that's what I do. And Patch says, yeah, but you suck at it. And because and to me it's so important to be kind, and you have these people who are cold because they're doctors or whatever, and they think it's their mind, and then I feel like they're not, if you want to, you have to respect people, and if you look down on the person, which people tend to do, I think a lot of the people in the health field are hurting others, especially in mental health, because they look down on the person, and they're cold. So then you're not. I don't think you are being helped. They're being paid, so they think they're doing their job. But when you meet kind people, there's this healing. You feel this healing when you feel someone who's kind. And I remember there were some of those people as well. Well, anyway, I'm sorry I ran it going on and on here. We have a minute to go. So
no.
Lisa, do you have any final words for our listeners?
Wow. No, well, yeah, but I mean, I just love the fact that you shared that. That is fantastic. I think the more we all share the experiences of our life, whether they were good or whether they were traumatic, we're healing. We're all, it's all a, we're here to help one another. and finding answers and, questioning things in life. It's all good. And, and if you're feeling like you said that, maybe the medical profession in and of itself wasn't necessarily helpful for what you needed, then, there's all these alternatives too to explore as well. So I think, it's fantastic.
Well, that's why I think it's wonderful that what you're doing. I'm always interested. Mark Mancini's got some other guests who are also in the health field in non-traditional ways, and that's why I'm always happy to meet them and encourage them, because like I said, I feel that there's so much to learn, and so I commend you and your work, and I think it's tremendous. And as my father used to say, keep up the good work, and thanks so much for coming on the show, Lisa Eurich.
Well, thank you, Peter. I appreciate
Dear
it.
listener, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Good night, everybody. Thanks again, Lisa.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Good night.